Hey, it's me, Jetski, and today we're talking about Sonic Lost World and how I actually think it's really cool, even though most people don't. Now, before we start though, I will have to ask you to please like and sub, as it really helps out the channel. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers sooner than later. Anyways, let's hop right into the video. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about is the criticisms that I actually agree with, and there are a few, I will admit. The first thing that I'm going to agree with is the story. I won't lie to you, the story in this game is pretty bad. I don't like it. I think the writing in this game is pretty awful. I think the voice direction is pretty bad for Sonic specifically. Like with Eggman, Mike Pollock actually does a really good job, but when comparing him to Roger, that's not really saying that much. Roger, I love him to death, he's my favorite Sonic, but man, this is by far, bar none, definitely his worst performance as the Blue Blur. I also want to briefly discuss Kate Higgins in this game, as this was her last performance as Tails before Colleen O'Shaughnessy actually took over from 2014 to actually the present day. I gotta say, I honestly for a long time didn't think there was much of a difference between Kate Higgins' portrayal of Tails and Colleen O'Shaughnessy's, but going back and playing Lost World, there's a huge difference in just tone and overall delivery, and it might just be the voice direction, but honestly, I think Colleen O'Shaughnessy gives Tails a much more likable and just more interesting tone than Kate Higgins really ever did, and that might just be because, you know, Kate Higgins was only around for like 2 mainline Sonic games before being replaced, so I could be wrong on that. Let me know in the comments below if you think if Kate Higgins would have got better. Honestly, that's another thing too. I know I talked about how bad the story is, but I don't think it's necessarily the whole plot that's the problem with the story in this game. It's more so the characterization. Like, Sonic in this game is almost portrayed as a complete idiot. Everything that happens in this game that goes wrong is almost entirely his fault. Also, Tails is portrayed as a complete jerk in this game. Like, he's so unlikable. I don't think it's a good thing when your main 2 protagonists of the game are completely unlikable jerks that are oftentimes really stupid and make bizarre mistakes. Another criticism I do have to agree with is that the Deadly Six aren't interesting as characters. I don't think they're very interesting, and in terms of the plot, they almost present just borderline stupid stereotypes to fill out a plot. Really, the plot, like I've said, is the hugest problem with this game. But that's really the only thing that I really have to say in terms of like criticisms I genuinely agree with. Let's talk about the criticisms that I don't actually agree with. So one of the biggest criticisms that I don't agree with at all is this game's soundtrack. I can't believe people have gone out of the way to say, yeah, this soundtrack is kind of mid. It is definitely not mid, buddy. It is a really good soundtrack. There's automatically some of the best sounds in the entire franchise on the soundtrack. Sure, there can be some mid tunes, but I think that's with every Sonic game. Not every Sonic track is going to be great. But saying that the whole soundtrack is bad because you don't like the Desert Ruins theme is crazy, man. Here are, in my opinion, some of the best tracks from the game. I feel like after listening to those tracks, you have to admit that Sonic Lost World has a pretty good soundtrack. But I want to stop talking about the soundtrack for now and get onto something a lot more controversial that I completely disagree with. That's Sonic's control. Now, Sonic, if you don't know, in Sonic Lost World has a run button. And honestly, it never once bothered me, the fact that he has a run button. I think it's completely overblown, and honestly, if Sonic didn't have the run button, I don't think it would work very well for this game. I know people wanted more momentum-based physics because, you know, they weren't going to do the boost, and that's what most people thought this game was going to be. And I understand that Sonic's regular ground speed is really slow, especially for a Sonic game, you know, people want to go fast in that. However, it never really bothered me in my playthrough. It didn't detract anything at all. It also helps streamline a lot of the parkour mechanics, like you can press the run button and you can run on the walls. It's pretty easy, more or less. That's another thing that I didn't really get, you know. I think the parkour mechanics were honestly not too bad in this game. It's quite optional, but I feel like that's for the best, honestly, because not everybody's going to want to be in a parkour Sonic movement and stuff, but here I think it really works, you know. Now, could the parkour have been implemented a little bit better in this game? Oh, absolutely. It's a little bit too optional. I wish they would have had a few more set pieces or whatever that use the parkour, instead of just the few levels or whatever, but for what it's worth, I still think it's really cool, and it was done pretty well for the most part. But since we're talking about Sonic speed, that is another pretty common complaint that I see about this game, that Sonic is just way too slow in this game, and it's kind of lackluster. I have never once ever gotten that. These people clearly do not know what the infinite spin dash is. Let me tell you about the infinite spin dash. The infinite spin dash is by far, bar none, the best 3D spin dash in a 3D Sonic game literally ever. I'm sorry, I know Adventure 1 fans love the spam dash, but let me tell you, this absolutely trumps the spam dash. The infinite spin dash in this game is just great. It's so fun to pull off, it's so fluid, and it's so interesting to do. If you're looking for a reason to play Lost World, the infinite spin dash is definitely a good reason to play it. Another common complaint I see with Sonic Lost World is the aesthetic, and I understand, you know, Desert Ruins and Windy Valley aren't the most original levels ever, but really those are like the only two big, like, generic levels. But really, I don't know how far you would go to say generic. I would say they're more weird and bizarre, to be honest. A good example of this is Desert Ruins, which is literally like running around giant donuts as if they're loop-de-loops and running on literal giant Twizzlers. I would say that's like far from generic. Like I said, I understand Windy Valley and regular Desert Ruins. Those are legitimately pretty generic levels. The lava level, which I can't even remember, to be honest with you. But most of these levels are really just bizarre and kind of odd. I would not say they're generic at all, really. That's pretty much all my thoughts on the complaints that I don't agree with. On to the conclusion. In conclusion, I think Sonic Lost World is a really cool game. It has a lot of cool aspects. Obviously, there's a lot of complaints that I do still agree with. I do agree that the story is a pretty kind of mediocre, and the writing in general is just pretty bad, but I think there's a lot of great stuff in this game that commonly gets overlooked. I think the parkour is great. I think the infinite spin dash is great. I think it looks really good. I think the cutscenes are very well presented, even though they're not written well. I think the music is stellar, like always. There is a lot of great stuff about Sonic Lost World that consistently gets overlooked, and I feel like that's a bit unfair. I feel like people should be more open-minded and give this another chance. And just because it has a much more classic Sonic lenient aesthetic doesn't automatically make the game look bad. That's pretty much all I have to say for this video. If you guys liked it, please like and sub, as it really helps out the channel. It was Mia Jutski, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.